The DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. These Democratic Socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegates suffer sensory overload. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century, a fucking mess. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
Bill Maher hasn't backed off the fight with the Democratic Socialists, calling them out in the most savage fashion yet on his show Real Time. The comedian and TV host tore into the DSA for pushing policies he argues could hurt the country politically and create serious problems inside the Democratic Party. So what exactly did Maher say about the Democratic Socialists that's left everyone's jaw on the floor? Hit subscribe and let's dive in.
When you let them take over a major American city, this is what you get. The state-run grocery stores, which worked so well in Cuba and the Soviet Union and Venezuela, just bad ideas. And again, this ugly streak, streak of anti-Semitism.
Bill Maher hasn't backed off the fight with the Democratic Socialists, calling them out in the most savage fashion yet on his show, Real Time. The comedian and TV host tore into the DSA for pushing policies he argues could hurt the country politically and create serious problems inside the Democratic Party. So, what exactly did Maher say about the Democratic Socialists that's left everyone's jaw on the floor? Hit subscribe, and let's dive in. Bill Maher didn't hold back, ripping into New York Democrats for handing the mayor's office to Zoran Mamdani, a self-described Democratic Socialist. Now, you might assume New York is just one city, a blue bubble that doesn't reflect what mainstream Democrats actually believe. But that assumption could be dead wrong. New York isn't just any city. It's the financial capital of the United States, the beating heart of American commerce. And what happened?
Bernie is, Bernie is, I mean, he's not a capitalist, you know?
No, he's not. And he's also not president.
He's not, but
never would be.
But neither is Mamdani.
No, but he will, trust me, he will be featured in the campaign commercials.
But they're going to feature people, they boogeyman everybody.
Yeah, but you don't have to boogeyman him. He does it to himself.
There doesn't stay contained within the 5 boroughs. It ripples outward, shaping markets, policy, and perception nationwide. So, when a Democratic Socialist takes the helm of a city this influential, the consequences aren't just symbolic, they're structural, and they may not be obvious right away. Maher seems to think this is a warning sign Democrats are ignoring at their own peril. Is this the moment the party tips too far left, or is it just noise? Stick around, because Maher's take might surprise you. Bill Maher believes embracing Democratic Socialists like Mamdani, AOC, or Bernie Sanders could spell game over for the Democratic Party. His reasoning is simple but cutting. Republicans would have a field day using these figures and their socialist-leaning policies as ammunition against the DNC. Why does this matter so much? Because, as Maher points out, socialism has a...
These Democratic Socialists at another of their conventions, they were told to make jazz hands instead of clapping, lest some delegates suffer sensory overload. And also, and I'm not joking, they were told not to be wearing, any aggressive scents.
Please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Really? This is who the Democrats are thinking of following? Chuck Schumer ain't perfect, but at least he doesn't crumple into a heap when confronted with Chanel No. 5.
Brutal track record in the examples he brings up, from the collapse of the Soviet Union to Venezuela's economic ruin. History, he argues, isn't on the socialist side, and pretending otherwise is political suicide. For Maher, this isn't just about ideology. It's about electability. The moment Democrats let socialism become the face of the party, Republicans won't need to invent attack lines. Reality will hand them one. Is Maher right that this could doom the Democrats for a generation? Or is he overstating the threat? Let's break down his argument and see if it holds up. Bill Maher took aim at what he sees as the overreach lurking inside democratic socialism, warning, half joking, half serious, that if figures like these gained more power, more of daily life could become subject to political and cultural policing. He painted a picture of a movement so eager to please its far-left base that even the smallest, most personal choices could come under scrutiny.
Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century. Yes. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
How people clap, what perfume they wear, and the tiny rituals nobody thinks twice about. For Maher, this isn't really about clapping or cologne. It's a jab at a broader tendency he sees on the far left, an instinct to police behavior and language until everything becomes a statement and nothing is just normal anymore. It's classic Maher, exaggerated for laughs, but aimed at a real anxiety many voters share about where progressive politics might be headed. Is he exaggerating for comic effect, or pointing at something real? Stick around as we dig into what's behind the joke. Maher argues that New York, under Mamdani's leadership, cannot simply reinvent the wheel of socialism and expect a different outcome. History, he notes, offers plenty of cautionary tales. Countries like Venezuela have experimented with socialist policies for decades, only to encounter economic collapse, political instability, and widespread hardship. To Maher, these repeated failures aren't coincidences.
And the Democrats, I read these, 74% are for democratic socialism. Only 16% favor capitalism. Is this going to be a country that I don't recognize in 5 to 10 years if we don't have these two pillars? If we don't, where are the Democrats going with this? If Mamdani is the face of the Democrats on the East Coast and Katie Porter is the face on the West Coast, I don't know if that's great politically for that party.
They are patterns. And if larger systems have struggled with similar ideas, he questions whether New York can avoid the same practical problems. Instead, Maher leans toward capitalism as the more realistic system. He doesn't pretend it's flawless. Far from it. Inequality, corporate excess, and systemic gaps are all part of the equation. But in his view, capitalism functions precisely because it aligns with human nature, particularly the instinct for self-interest and ambition. Rather than fighting that reality, it channels it into productivity and innovation. For Maher, the choice isn't about perfection. It's about what actually works in practice. Nope. It doesn't look great at all. Maher and other critics argue that the Democrats' 2024 loss reflected, in part, voter fatigue with what they saw as an overemphasis on woke cultural priorities. For a significant portion of the electorate, the focus seemed disconnected from everyday economic concerns, and that
Do you think that the mayor, that one person, if he is a Democratic Socialist, do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to, usher in socialism?
He definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever is the Republican candidate next time. It is a walking commercial for the Republican Party nationally.
I think the Republicans are going to...
When you let the Democrat Socialists...
Frustration showed up at the ballot box. Looking ahead, there's a real possibility that a stronger embrace of socialist-leaning policies could create a similar political backlash in 2028. For many Americans, capitalism, despite its flaws, remains the preferred system because it emphasizes individual opportunity, market competition, and economic mobility. Socialism, on the other hand, is often viewed with skepticism, with critics arguing that it risks inefficiency, government overreach, and long-term economic decline. Whether that perception is entirely fair or not, it carries political weight. If Democrats fail to address these concerns, they may once again find themselves out of step with a broad swath of voters. Yes, Mamdani arguably has the platform and influence to push policies that lean toward democratic socialism, particularly within a political environment where progressive ideas have gained traction among certain segments of the Democratic Party. However, translating ideology into policy requires more than momentum. It demands strategic positioning and institutional support.
Okay, the Democrats put up Kamala, who really wasn't that great, because they're the Democrats, and they just had to put up a person of color. So now you got this guy, Wes Moore, and come on, isn't he there just because he's a person of color? I'm not saying that's what the truth is.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's what the Democrats bought themselves with going too far on the DEI train. That's what they bought themselves. Suspicion now for any person of color who is at the head of the ticket.
Or democratic socialism, particularly within a political environment where progressive ideas have gained traction among certain segments of the Democratic Party. However, translating ideology into policy requires more than momentum. It demands strategic positioning and institutional support. That means identifying allies within the party, building coalitions, and elevating individuals who share similar policy priorities into positions of influence. In practice, this could involve advocating for like-minded policymakers to take on key administrative or advisory roles, thereby shaping the direction of governance from within. Critics point to appointments such as C. Weaver, who is often associated with more left-leaning economic views, as an example of this broader strategy. Supporters, on the other hand, would argue that such appointments simply reflect a shift toward policies focused on equity and social welfare. Ultimately, the real test lies not in ideology alone, but in how effectively those ideas are implemented.
The fact that New York is considering electing Mamdani mayor is not a great harbinger for the Democratic Party. That is not a great look.
It is a testament.
Maybe you like him. Maybe he's your boy.
It is a testament to the fact. Here's what I think. I think it's a testament to the fact that despite what in the past might have seemed like disqualifying factors, I think that people are drawn to the individual candidates who can stand out among fields of very rote, boring politicians.
You kind of look like him, you know.
I look like
I'm just saying.
like Zoran Mamdani.
I don't know how you could like this guy, but okay.
I think he is. I really don't have a whole lot of opinions on the New York mayoral race.